Welcome to the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. I'm Larry Wagner, and I've spent 30 years working with seniors where I was a certified senior advisor and the last 15 years in the home buying industry as a certified senior transition specialist, where I specialize in dealing with seniors going through a transition in their lives. This podcast is for seniors, those with seniors they love, and people who work in the senior community. In each episode, we bring on a guest who works to improve the lives of seniors. This podcast is your key to unlocking senior resources. Today we're here with Charlene Loglisci from Brandywine Huntington Terrace. Hello, Charlene.
Thanks for having me.
So you were the director of Huntington Terrace.
Yes, I am.
The director of sales and marketing specifically.
Correct.
So the question, how did you get to that role?
So I started out as a case manager in assisted living. Enjoyed that role. I have a background in social work, but I also wanted to get involved with the beginning. So even before the resident moves in, to learn about them, work with the families, help them to make sure that this is the right fit for them. If not, help them to find a location that is. And so I moved into that sales role where I have the benefit of getting to know them before they move in and then being with them and work for them once they're in the building as well.
Question for you. You said something interesting, that you want to make sure they're a good fit. I appreciate that because as a cash home buyer, first thing I say to people when they call us, I say, we want to make sure we're a good fit for you. If not, we'll tell you what else to do. You don't want someone who doesn't belong there. It's not to your benefit, nor theirs, more importantly. What would make somebody not a good fit?
Well, first thing is financial. It is a private pay community. So if I start speaking with someone and they're looking for a Medicaid community, something like that, I will help them to find somebody that can, find the proper place for them.
Mm-hmm. Is the other issue, I assume, health or not necessarily? Their ability?
So we'll always do an assessment.
Right.
That's part of the plan. So I'm getting the initial information to make sure that we can meet their needs. Once in a while, I speak with someone and they truly need a skilled nursing facility, which is beyond what we can provide. Other times we can provide that care with our enhanced license. So that's a discussion I have with them up front.
Okay, I have so much to say. Okay, you mentioned enhanced license.
Mm-hmm.
No, we'll get to that a little bit later. Make sure we bring that up again if I forget.
Sure.
But you mentioned about doing admissions work. And just for full disclosure, my parents lived at Brandywine Huntington Terrace for about 5 years. I convinced them, I'm going to say single-handedly, because my brother and sister didn't really agree with me, that they should move there. Mm-hmm. They were perfectly able-bodied people that were at home. My mother wasn't preparing meals properly anymore. They were having an English muffin for dinner,
right,
kind of thing. They didn't have the emotional energy, not so much the physical energy, the emotional energy to go through life in the way they should. Mm-hmm. And I felt and a lot of their friends were passing away or moving down south or moving closer to their children. They were very social. And the sense of isolation and lack of motivation to properly take care of themselves was a big deal. My father's still working. He was in his mid-80s. And so wasn't a lack of ability. It was a lack of drive. Mm-hmm. And so that's why my brother and sister didn't see the advantage to move into independent living. But after a year, I convinced them to go. And you were the first person we met. Mm-hmm. And my father wanted no part of it. And he finally agreed. My father walked through your facility, got the tour of your facility with his cane. Walking stick. He wouldn't use a cane. I had him built him a walking stick. I'm a woodworker. Something fancy looking. And he walked through and said, I see a few people with walkers. I don't belong here. Meanwhile, he had to take a rest and sit in a chair because he couldn't make it throughout the whole tour. So, but he felt he was
sure,
more fit than them. And it turned he was not more fit than them. And he wanted to stay there. He said he wasn't signing a lease, and you assured him there was no lease. He stayed there for 1 month. Said, I'm not renewing I'm not signing a lease the next month, but I'll stay another month. And you said, no problem. Just stay as long as you want. And after 3 months, he decided it's the place to be. Right. And my mother decided after 2 weeks that she loved it there. And they started playing bridge with people there. And it worked out perfectly for them. And they were there for 5 years until they passed. So, and they told me numerous times that they're so happy that I'd literally pushed them and drove them to get there. and it worked out real well. So a real credit to your place.
Thank you. It is overwhelming. It is a very big decision, and people are worried. What if I move in and I don't like it? They're very worried about that. And so they do ask, about signing a lease. Instead, we do offer trial stays. You can come and try it out for 30 days, see how you like it. Once they do decide they're going to sign that residency agreement, truly it's month to month.
Right.
At any time, if a resident does decide to move out, I've had residents that their families moving down to Virginia, and so they wanted to move down with them. Any reason, you give 30 days notice. You're not locked into a year lease or anything like that.
And 30 days is nothing. It takes more than 30 days to decide and to get yourself together to move.
Exactly.
So absolutely, it was a wonderful experience. I want to, the most important comment I'll make, that, and I'll ask you another question, was your staff. I'm going to make a bunch of comparisons throughout this discussion, because my in-laws went somewhere else, close to where they really spent all the years, living. So that's where I had them look at your place and somewhere else. I don't want to mention the name. And I really pushed them to your place. I have a history. I know the people. And what really got me is almost all of them have nice facilities. And yours is very nice. You would redecorate and so on. But it's the people in the facility that count.
That's
and
right.
There was nobody there that wasn't delightful. Nobody from the time you walk in the door. But there was one standout experience I had that was so indicative but mind-blowing to me, was I walked in to see my parents, who were in the happy hour, which they went to most every night. It seems like it's a big hit. And I walk in the lobby, and this woman who I had never met before, I'm 5'3". She was a very tall woman. When you're my height, you're very aware of very tall women. And she says to me, "Oh, Mr. Wagner, your parents are out on the back terrace. Why don't you go join them there?" I'd never met this woman. How she knew who I was and that I belonged to my parents blows my mind. But people there who I'd seen in the hallway knew who I was. But this woman I'd never seen. And I don't know what you do. I'm not going to ask you secret sauce. I don't know if you have video cameras and you test people every day. I don't know what you do, but that seemed like an impossible thing for me. And that won me over. That to me was the ultimate in service, like in Cheers, where everybody knows your name.
Right.
And literally everybody there knew my name. And I wasn't a resident. I was the son of a resident.
Right.
And so I can't give you a higher praise for that one moment alone. So, and this is 4 years ago, and pre-COVID, so 5 years ago, and it stuck with me.
Sure.
So it shows how impactful those little experiences are.
Yeah, we pride ourselves on the longevity of our team. Myself, I've been there 16 years already.
Wow.
And many of the team members have been there 20 years.
Wow.
So, you find good people, you treat them right, they stay with the company, and to your point about knowing, not only the residents, but their families.
Right.
Part of my job is, once I know that resident is going to be joining us, is to share information with the team.
Right.
We have team meetings every morning with the department heads, let them know about the new residents coming in, their families, what's important about them. If they've recently lost a spouse, or the reason for their move, that they're looking to make friends, which mostly everybody is.
Yep.
Just telling a little bit about that new resident coming in. They enjoy, playing bridge or mahjong, or they love live entertainment. Right. All these little things, even their favorite drink. You brought up cocktail hour.
Right.
They love a glass of Chardonnay.
Right.
Those things I share with the team so that when that new resident comes in, everybody already knows a little bit about them. And then individually, everybody gets to know them in their own way.
Right. Absolutely. I'm just thinking, my mind is going through all these staff stories. I gave the best one. I'm not going to go through all the others. There's no reason. But literally every person we've encountered was that way, which is mind-blowing. But you mentioned happy hour. My parents loved happy hour. They went there multiple times a week. And we would go there probably once a week, maybe twice a week during happy hour. And there was a real crowd there. And a lot of family.
Yep.
Right. So it's a great time. It's the pre-dinner time. They're already downstairs. And it gives the family time to get together. We'd bring our kids, my parents' grandkids.
Right.
And there was so many of them. The place was hopping during that time, and it was spread out not in just one place. And it was nice. Everyone had their own little spot where they would hang out. And you just knew where to find everyone, except that one day my father was out on the back terrace. So which I wouldn't have known that. But it was actually nice because you had indoor and outdoor, and
Yeah.
bartender at the time was the life. I don't know if he's still with you, but he was an older gentleman at the time, so I have no idea. But and he even knew what you drank.
Exactly. They know it by heart,
Yes.
and families are welcome to visit anytime.
Yep.
What I love is, for our residents that are even, like your parents, reluctant to move in, they keep telling their families, this is not for me. I'm
Right.
not ready for this.
Right.
Well, fast forward a couple of months,
Mm.
the family members are calling them and saying, all right, Mom, I'm going to come visit you tomorrow at 3:00. And Mom says, I got a card game. You can't
Right.
come at 3:00, or there's a live entertainer coming in.
Yes.
They're busy.
Yes.
And so they'll tell their families, well, instead, come after my favorite activity. Come during happy hour, which is such a nice time. During the day, residents are in activities, and sometimes they're just focused on that activity. Let's say it's a speaker. We do a lot of lifelong learning programs, or like I mentioned, a live entertainer, or they're in that exercise program. They're kind of focused on what they're doing in that task.
Yep.
Where happy hour towards the end of the day is a nice time to get together, have a drink, talk about the lecture that they listened to, and just talk about what's going on in their families' lives and their lives. Time to wind down before going in for dinner.
Correct. Time to wind down. It's a perfect term. That's exactly what it was. 'Cause my mother and father would be very busy. My father, he was my business partner, and he stopped coming to work. He stopped coming to work because he had too many activities. When he lived at home, what activity did he have? He'd read the paper.
Right.
At night, he'd play bridge with their friends, 3 times a week. But that was it. And he'd watch the news, but that was in the evening anyway. But once he went to your place, suddenly he's coming 4 days a week, then 3 days a week.
Right.
Then he'd come in when he wanted to come in. He'd come in for a few hours. And we were in Hicksville, and you were in Melville. So it was, 10 minutes away. We were also right off the expressway. So it was so funny that his whole life had changed. I mean, he was in his mid-80s still working, but suddenly he was now enjoying the day in a different way than he had in the past. And this from a guy who vehemently was against moving there because he didn't need to. Suddenly he's eating better. I'll get to that in a second. He's socializing better. He's living in a cleaner home, which is now you take care of making sure the place is clean in which they're living. That wasn't the case there. They didn't have the ability to do the cleaning. A person comes in and throws in the laundry, and it just wasn't happening.
Right.
And they became less of a load on my wife and me. We consider privileged to take care of my parents and her folks, but I'd much rather them not rely on us for their sake, not for our sake. That's huge.
And your visits are more quality.
Absolutely.
Even for myself with my grandmother, when she was living in Brooklyn, when I went to her house, it was task driven.
Right.
I had to do certain things so that I could take care of her and she could maintain and be at home. When that wasn't an option anymore, and she actually moved into my community, now, after I was finished with my work day, I would go, and spend my quality time with her. Now I was just having a conversation with her. I wasn't there to do all of those tasks around the house that I had to do before.
I have never heard that term, that your visit was task-driven. That's exactly the case. I've never actually used that term. That's perfect.
Yeah.
And that was so much the case with my folks. And you're right. There were no more tasks to do. Occasionally, my mother told us to pick something up to put in the refrigerator. Which, by the way, your kitchen was, I don't know why you have such nice kitchens in your apartments, because they eat every meal down there in the restaurant, in the dining room. Anyway, but you had a full-size refrigerator, a stove. You had a dishwasher that came with a box of detergent.
Right.
5 years later, that box of detergent was still inside the dishwasher. I mean, I don't know what you guys are thinking there. And their apartment was phenomenal. They happened to have a 2-bedroom apartment that turned out to be very fortuitous, because later on, mother got ill and they had to have an aide to come in and stay with her. So that worked out very, very. Who knew? But putting that aside, the apartment was big. It was beautifully laid out, and it had a kitchen for some strange reason.
But some people do cook.
Do they really?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've had residents, like I said, I've been there 16 years. So throughout my years, I have residents that will choose to make breakfast in their apartment every day because they don't want to come down to the main dining room and have breakfast. They want to cook in their apartment. That's fine.
Right.
I have residents, they would just choose, Sunday, make their Sunday sauce.
Right.
Have their family over. So they had their family visit with them. They could cook right there in the apartment.
Yep.
Another resident, Anthony, loved to bake, which was fortuitous for me.
Was it real?
Although I gained a little weight, but
Yeah.
he would bake in his apartment. He really loved that. He enjoyed that.
Right.
Well, this way, he did it when he felt up to, when he wanted to. But the rest of his meals, he can go into the dining room and enjoy with friends.
Right.
But when he wanted to bake, he could bake in his apartment. And then he would bring it around to all our staff members.
There you go. Well, my parents used a microwave to heat water for their instant coffee. They were they're big coffee drinkers, instant coffee. But putting that aside, so they I hope someone's in that apartment now using the kitchen because it was a really nice kitchen. But I was going to make a comment. You mentioned something before about enhanced care.
Sure.
And I know what separates your facility is that you have different levels of care for starters, and then that's sort of where the hands comes in. Can you explain the difference between your facility and others?
Sure, that's right. So we do have 3 different communities. We have our independent living community, our assisted living community, and Reflections, which is our memory care community. What's really interesting is that we have actually 2 separate buildings. So our independent living, as you said, it's true independent living with full kitchens and with washers and dryers. Next door is our assisted living, which as an offshoot has the memory care program. Separate building. It's attached, so it's all a part of Brandywine, but that's where we're offering other services in assisted living and memory care. Where there, you have nurses on site 24 hours a day. As you mentioned, the enhanced license. So we do have that enhanced license, which means our residents can age in place with us. As their needs change, we can provide more and more care for them. And by having those nurses on site 24 hours a day really makes the difference for people.
Right.
You think about wake up in the middle of the night, and you're not feeling well, you want to know there's a nurse there that can come to your apartment and be with you and assist you when needed. Not just somebody on call and there's just aides in the building. You actually have those nurses, or even medication management. If you need someone to give you your medications, it's a nurse giving you your medications. So much more than someone that's just handing you a pill. Right? I'm not a nurse. I can hand somebody a pill. Okay, I know you get this 3 times a day. It's much different when a nurse is doing it. Before a nurse gives you that pill, they're looking at you. Maybe they see, no, your legs are a little bit swollen. Instead of me giving you this pill, I'm going to call your doctor instead.
Oh, that's interesting.
All those little things that make such a huge difference for our residents' health and well-being.
That's I would never thought of that. You're right. I'm thinking a pill giver's a pill giver.
Right.
But
much different when a nurse is doing it. They're looking for those, medical signs that as a layperson, we don't see.
Most facilities, and my in-laws are in one now, and my mother-in-law was just in the hospital for 16 days, and I wasn't sure she was going to be able to come back. She's doing very well in rehab, and she'll be back, and thank God. It was not, that advanced stage of 16 days in the hospital, that in itself is an issue.
Right.
But we were going to have to put her in a different place and leave my father-in-law in one place and her in another, and that was not tenable.
Right.
And we didn't know what to do. So in your place, there's an answer. Okay, so
there is. And that answer is different for everyone. When we talk about couples, I've had scenarios where I've had couples come to me and they might be at different levels of care, and they say, but we want to stay together. That's our goal. If that's your goal, that's our goal, to keep you together in the same apartment. Where I've also had scenarios, for instance, I had a couple living in my independent living community where your parents were, and the wife developed Alzheimer's. So unfortunately, she started staying up at night, which meant her husband was staying up at night caring for her. As a caregiver, we know that it is so hard on caregivers, and their health can deteriorate by trying to take care and give the best care that they can. His health started to deteriorate because he was up basically now 24/7 For them, the best scenario was we moved his wife into the memory care program.
Right.
He stayed in independent living. So now they had 2 separate apartments,
Right.
but he could wake up in the morning. He would have breakfast with his friends. Then he would go down the hallway, go right into the memory care program, spend quality time with her,
Yep.
and then come back over to independent living, play cards with his friends,
Right.
and visit her whenever he wanted.
It's perfect.
So they had the best of both worlds for them and their needs, where, like I said, other couples, they want to stay together in the same apartment. So whatever their goal is what we're going to try to work for.
That's a perfect scenario. And we debated, do we move my father-in-law after my mother-in-law and then
Sure.
put him in a place that doesn't really belong, or she'd be in a nursing home, he doesn't need a nursing home.
Right.
And we were torn.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God that hasn't reared its ugly head. It seems like we're going to be just fine, but by the graces of God, not because of where they are.
Yeah.
That's huge. And so we talk about, I know when, again, I'm in the industry, I own some nursing homes in Illinois, small facilities, 15-bed facilities, but I know enhanced care is a big deal, and so many places don't have that certification.
Right.
And that's a big differentiator, as you said. So between your location, your different levels of care, and then the certification, additionally, it's just a nice place, and your staff is tremendous. And you said, and the fact that you have longevity in your staff says something about the environment.
Yes.
People stay when they're happy.
That's right.
And what more important personality trait do you want from people dealing with seniors than them to be happy when they're there? I mean,
exactly.
The skill level is important, but you have the best level of skill. But if you're not happy, your level of skill is not going to be exercised. So it really was, again, it was a wonderful time. And I'll say something, and I say this in a very positive way. It was a very bad experience for us, but my mother developed Lewy body dementia, and she basically became a vegetable. She had 24-hour care. At one point, we just kept her in her room because it's an independent living facility. You're always touring people through the facility. People are there to make friends with people who are able-bodied.
Mm-hmm.
That definition could be broad.
Sure.
But she was no longer able-bodied. She couldn't speak. She couldn't move. She couldn't do anything. And we kept her in her room because it was inappropriate really to bring her out. Or occasionally we bring her out, but really very seldom. Because you guys were kind enough to let us keep her there, because the idea of moving her would have been so detrimental to her health.
Right. This was her home.
This was her home, for the last, number of years.
Sure.
And she spent 3 years like that with an aide. She had 2 aides coming and going. We were very fortunate, a very good organization that supplied aides to us. There were horror stories with aides. We've had almost none for 3 years. But you guys were wonderful. And the aide every day would pick up her food and bring it back. And for a nominal fee, we were able to feed these. She would do her own cooking, and if she wanted food, she looked at if the menu was good that day.
See?
There's the kitchen, right? That's that's true. There's the kitchen. It was for the aide. Who knew? But she still never used the dishwasher. So I remember we moved them out. The soap was still in the dishwasher. So I guess she washed dishes by hand. But that's very funny. But you guys were as nice to the aide who was not a paying resident as you were to my mother. And the staff was, again, I keep saying that because there's literally nothing more important. A facility is only as good as the people in it. If your carpet's new or older, that's secondary, which yours was newer anyway. You redecorated while we were there. I don't know if you're going through another decoration now. Did I see? I don't recall, but you just redecorated a number of years ago.
Yeah, every few years,
right,
you need a refresh.
You need a
refresh. Of course,
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So absolutely.
And so with that, I can't sing your praises any more than I did. I tried to get my in-laws to go there, but they want to go back to where they really spent the last 50 years. The town they spent the last 50 years. So it was an uphill battle that I just lost.
Sure.
But I knew the people. I knew you, and I knew all your staff. Well, I can say I knew your staff, and I so desperately want them to go there. But they went. It's fine. But to give an idea, we didn't experience any of this with you guys. And again, with all my mother's trials and tribulations. My father-in-law had developed some back issues.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he didn't develop. They sort of reared their themselves again. And he went to send for, one day he asked to have breakfast brought to his room Well, at one point, they used to bring food to your room if you weren't able to go down. And then one day, they started hitting you with a $10 bill. But it was like after the fact. That, by the way, this is $10. So then they said, well, if someone brings the food to you, then there's no charge. So then my mother would bring food to him, and one day she brought him for breakfast a bagel. Literally a bagel with butter on it. And they got a $10 bill. Said, wait, why you bring me $10? My wife brought it to me. Well, it's actually my daughter, their daughter, my wife doing the speaking. And why are you charging my parents $10 to bring a bagel to my mother to bring a bagel to the room? Oh, no. If you order food for someone else and bring it to the room now we charge you $10. So if he comes down, it's okay. And what got me was during COVID, and even now they had a series of, I'm sure everyone has COVID in their place or the flu. It's just going to happen. We're all people. And so they had 5 cases of COVID in the building. And if you had COVID and didn't go down to get your food, they charge you for your food.
Oh, my gosh.
So they're telling you, come down, and older people could be kind of conscious about $10.
100%.
So with that in mind, they're telling people with COVID to come down to save $10.
Oh, my
What
gosh.
message are you sending these people?
Oh, my gosh.
So not even
putting everyone else at risk.
Putting the whole facility at risk. It made no sense.
No.
And my wife's been down there. My brother-in-law's been down there complaining about the policy. So they said, now, if you come down and order food, 2 portions for yourself,
right,
and then package one up in your own dishes or containers and bring it back to your room, we're not going to charge you. But if you say I'm ordering one for my husband or my wife and then put in your own containers, then we're going to charge you.
This is way too complicated.
These are senior citizens. They don't know what you're talking about.
Gosh.
And what's the reason for this insanity? So it says something. When you're treating your residents in such a penny ante way, when they're paying thousands and thousands of dollars a month to live there, way more than they're accustomed to paying in their own home, which typically has no mortgage, right?
Sure.
And they're living for the cost of taxes and utilities and insurance, and now suddenly they're paying all this money, and you're charging them $10
right
for a meal they've already paid for in their thousands of dollars a year to get to be there.
Oh, no.
It makes no sense. If you're going to deliver the food, I'll accept that.
Sure.
But if you're picking up the food, there's no circumstance, and they're not yielding. They're getting pushback, but they're fighting a battle, but they're going to lose the war. They're going to lose the respect and the relationship with their residents.
Right.
Over $10 here and there, and increase the number of people that come down to the dining hall who are sick.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
it. You don't do that.
They are very upfront with families and residents before they move in. The policies remain the same. So just in that case, just to explain how Brandywine handles it, if a resident is not feeling well,
Right.
we want them to relax in their apartment. We want them to get better, and we want them still to be nourished.
Right.
We will deliver their meals if they're not feeling well at no charge.
Right. No. Deliver their meals.
Deliver them. They call the front desk, or certainly if we know a resident is sick, we're calling them to check in on them.
Yeah.
Would you like something for lunch? What would you like for dinner? They place the order with our concierge, who gives that order to the kitchen. The kitchen fulfills it, and we deliver it to them.
Right.
There's no charge if someone is not feeling well.
Right.
If a resident feels absolutely fine,
Right.
they just feel like they want to dine in their apartment,
Right.
they can certainly come down and pick up their meal and bring it back to their apartment.
Yep.
No charge for that either. The only time there is a nominal $5 charge is someone truly wants room service.
Right.
So they feel fine,
Right.
but they don't feel like coming down for their food, and they would like our waiter or waitress to bring it to their apartment.
That seems reasonable to me.
Hi, I'm Larry.
And I'm Ben. We're the father and son team of Leave the Key Home Buyers, and we want to buy your house.
We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you are going through.
So if you're considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out and see how we can help.
Do you have an outdated home?
No need to update anything.
Have a home that needs repairs?
Don't bother with repairs.
Don't want to take everything with you?
Leave whatever you want behind.
Dreading the headaches that come with agents?
Sell your home without paying a commission.
Dreading prying neighbors attending open houses and passing judgment on your home?
No need for public showings.
When you sell to us, you'll have all the certainty of closing on your timeline, not someone else's, and there's absolutely no pressure.
Visit leavethekey.com or call us today for a no-obligation offer at 631-388-7771 if you want to sell your home today.
That seems you're asking for a courtesy. You're asking for something above and beyond what you normally would deliver to everyone else,
Right.
just because you want it.
That's right.
So when you want something, it costs money, but this is a need,
Right.
and the fact they won't even let you take it out yourself. I don't want to get on this horse because
No.
it's been a bone of contention in my family. So, but yes, and you've never ever, you as an organization and personally, you have never been discourteous to my folks or done anything of the sort. And as I said, the fact that you left my mother be all that time and respected the fact that it would be detrimental to her health
Right.
to request her to move, and you had every right to do that. She no longer fit your profile. But again, we tried to be courteous and not, roll her around because it really wasn't appropriate.
Mm.
So we worked together and in an unspoken manner, which was the best of all.
Right.
We didn't have to have a dialogue. We'll do this if you do that. We just understood each
Right.
other.
But she was able to remain in her home,
Correct.
have that dignity.
Yep.
Of course, we're hoping it made you, your family,
Absolutely.
comfortable.
Yes.
So it was the right thing to do. You have to look at business sometimes and just say, what's the right thing to do?
Correct. And when you're dealing with people, more importantly, with senior citizens,
Right.
who are probably the most difficult people to deal with because they have their ways. It's not that they're mean or anything. They're just entrenched
Right.
in their personalities and so on. And as sure you've heard as a social worker, that as you get older, your personality doesn't change. It just gets more exaggerated. So which is a really nice way of saying nasty people get really nasty and nice people get really nice. And that's what I found, with my parents, my grandparents. It's look, I didn't have any nasty parents or grandparents.
No, but you know what? When for instance, even when I'm interviewing staff, what I make sure that I drive home to staff members, getting old is hard.
Yeah.
Right?
I say it's not for the faint of heart is what I say.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the fact that that person might be a little cranky, think about why they might be cranky.
Right.
It's not just because they want to be cranky. It's because they're losing their independence. They're losing their ability to do certain things that they once were able to do. Maybe they can't do it for themselves and they want that independence and being able to do it for themselves. So you have to think about why they might be cranky.
Right.
Think about maybe they're in pain, arthritis, things like that. Pain causes you to be cranky, right? If my back hurts, I'm not a barrel of laughs that day.
As I'm looking at you, my neck arthritis is acting up. So yes, I understand, but I can't be cranky here.
So, you have to think about those things, and just, I think that's important too with the staff and making sure that they understand the reason why residents may be cranky that day, just to use that term. Because then they realize, well, they're not acting this way towards me. Right. Don't personalize it. I always tell the staff, it's not about you.
Yep.
It's about them.
I say that all the time. You have to understand people's motivation for what they say and how they act.
That's right.
And same thing. Don't take it personally.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's nasty, this has nothing to do with you. They just may be an unhappy person, or in your case, unhappy because aging issues. They just spend 10 minutes putting their shoes on.
Right.
And they're frustrated. It took them 10 minutes to get their shoes on, and now they miss their activity.
Exactly.
So
instead of focusing on, how it's affecting you,
right.
think about what can you do to try to make them have a better day.
Right. Absolutely. And you do that by having a great staff, and you do that by having activities that keep them busy all day if they choose.
That's
they
right.
Just sit back and just mellow and sit by the fireplace or whatever in the library and chill. And just wait for people to walk by and chat.
Yeah.
Which I remember the residents who did that would just sit in the same couch position every day and just watch people go by. And
exactly. Our goal is when residents move in, we want to get them to every activity. We want them busy.
Right.
That's not everybody's personality.
No.
I could say when I moved my own grandmother in, I wanted her to be the perfect resident in every activity.
Reflection of you in that.
Exactly. But you know what? For her, she wasn't that social butterfly.
Right.
For her, when I moved her out of Brooklyn, all she did all day, she was alone in that house. Right. She had Meals on Wheels delivered to her. That was her big, socialization, was somebody delivering food.
Right.
And then she sat and watched her soaps all day. She had zero socialization.
Yeah.
When she moved into my community, now she had conversations with people for breakfast,
Yep.
for lunch, for dinner.
Yeah.
She had conversations with the staff when they would come in to help her shower, get dressed. She had so much socialization without going to activities that when she didn't want to go for the entertainment and she wasn't a card player and she wanted to go to her room and watch her soap operas that she loved for 2 hours, it's fine. She was getting so much more socialization than she was at home just by going to those meals and, like I said, talking with other residents at those times.
The meals are such an important part of their day. Such an place that my parents were sharing English muffin for dinner, and now they're having what seemed like a restaurant quality meal.
Sure is.
They love the food. Question for you: your chef has been there a while?
Yes. Yes, number of years.
A number
Absolutely.
of years. You said pre-COVID even, so that's
Yes,
wonderful because we're not having the same experience where my in-laws are now. And seniors probably tend to complain about food because they need something to talk about. But putting that...
Right. I'm not going to talk about my back pain and then I'm going to say, the food was not home cooked.
Not home cooked, right,
Okay.
right. So, but they keep ordering more. They keep ordering more.
Oh, yes, as their weight goes up.
As the weight goes around. The food's, there's a Woody Allen's line, the portions, the food's terrible and the portions so small.
That's right.
I remember I'd been to a place that do you still go around to dessert cart?
Sure do. Yeah,
It was a
lots
big
of
deal.
options.
That was a whole smorgasbord coming to your table when you're ready for dessert. I remember I actually ate dinner there just one time, and I couldn't believe the food, the menu. Menu was outstanding. The food was very good. And then the dessert cart, I'm a dessert guy. If you just give me dessert, the dinner can go away. I don't care. And when the dessert cart rolled by, I mean, I couldn't believe all the selections of dessert. And
Sure.
people could be as piggish as they want and so on. And the food was really surprisingly good. And so my question is, because again, when my in-laws, they said my father was on a low sodium diet.
Mhm.
And he asked, do you have anything that's low sodium? And they said, no, we're not. But they're saying, we're not here to cater to every individual or something to that effect. We're not a restaurant, whatever,
gosh.
something really unpleasant. But do you have meals that would cater to senior citizens, of which many of them need low sodium diets?
Oh, we sure do. We offer lots of different diets for our residents.
Right.
Every day there are different options that are specials
Right.
for all 3 meals.
Right.
In addition, we have a standard menu that's always available. So if they don't want to choose one of those 3 specials, or 2 specials, they have the other options to always choose from. Things that are always available, whether it's salmon, chicken, all different things.
Right.
In addition, if, let's say, the chicken, comes with a sauce on it,
Right.
they prefer the sauce on the side, you can order, cook to order as well. And then special diet, sure, low sodium. A lot of residents are diabetic. They're watching their sugar-free desserts, things like that. In addition, I have residents that come in. I have a resident that moved in, I want to say it was last summer. He's a vegan, pure vegan. So he had a conversation with my chef, who's very accommodating, wants him to be able to have lots of choices, not just, we, of course, have lots of fresh vegetables.
Right.
But we don't want to just have fresh vegetables every single day. Let's add some new
Vegetable
things.
medley for dinner again.
Exactly. So my chef spoke with him. He ordered, some vegan cheeses and things like that. So now he has more variety in his diet to enjoy with us. So now we have a special vegan menu to offer. So
Now, is that for anybody who wants it?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's available to everybody now.
Mhm.
I have residents that have come in and, they want oat milk. They want almond milk. They want all different kinds of things. So we accommodate them.
Oh, that's wonderful. It really is like being in a restaurant. You
Sure
get
is.
anything you want.
Sure is.
And wow, that's way more than they get where they are at. I can't begin to tell you. And an average person is in a place like yours for just a number of years. I mean, they're coming at the latter part of their lives typically. And what I don't understand is when someone says, I need a low sodium diet for health reasons, you want to keep them healthy as long as possible. And just this. Put aside the humanitarian side of that.
Absolutely.
Just dollars and cents.
Right.
What's the cost? You have an item every day that's low sodium, which are probably a big hit. And they won't, and not only is it not low sodium, it's like heavy sodium. It's like in a lot of restaurants, they use a lot of
Sure.
to enhance the flavor. But that's what they do there. So not only is it not low, it's high.
Right.
It just bad business, let alone
Right.
unaccommodating.
I hear my chef talk about, using different spices to enhance the food instead of using salt, and certainly as you start to get older, you lose that sense of taste,
Correct.
which, as you mentioned before, sometimes the residents will complain about the food.
Yes.
It's not the food
Right.
because I can eat it and it's tasty,
Right.
but they're losing that sense of taste. That unfortunately happens as people get older. So that's really what they're experiencing. So our chefs do try to use different spices to try to enhance that flavor for them.
That's interesting. That's so sensible.
Mhm.
That's so sensible. So question, you've been there for how many years did you say?
16
I
years.
remember it was 16 years. If you were to tell me a favorite story or two of whether it's someone coming in, someone being there, or whatever, some engagement with a resident, do you have any in mind? And 16 years, they have a lot to choose from.
There are. What's really important is that we do have all three buildings, as I mentioned before.
Yeah.
I think about Barbara. When she first called me, she was living out of state. Her cousins lived here. She was a psychologist, and she said I'd been diagnosed with early Alzheimer's. She was fine at that point, but she wanted a plan for her future, and she was looking for a place that offered all the care that she needed because she knew what her future was going to look like. And she came in and she started out in independent living.
Right.
And then after some time, she started to need more assistance. And so she moved over to our assisted living, which is a seamless, very easy transition. She still sees me, who I met before she even moved in. And, a lot of the team members she's still seeing there in assisted living. So then she continued in assisted living for quite some time until she needed memory care.
Right.
And then she moved into our memory care program.
Wow.
Towards the end, she did also need hospice care, which we have right in our building. So she was able to get those services, and she was with us until the end.
How many people go through all 4 levels of care? That seems...
It happens. Not always, like your parents stayed in our, independent living throughout.
Yeah.
It's a choice, and it's what's right for that resident to
Right.
get the care that they're looking for and that they need. And I have residents that, like you said, some come in later and later, they want to stay home as long as possible, and that's fine, but it just gets to a point where it's not safe anymore. So they'll come in really needing a lot of care. And so they unfortunately won't be able to stay with us too long because they're really at the end of their time. But other people come in to independent living, let's say, when they just don't want to deal with the hassle of the house anymore.
Yep.
They don't want to eat alone anymore.
Yep.
They want to be around people. They want to have fun. They want to have friends. So they'll come in, younger, healthier, where they can really enjoy and benefit from all the programs that we offer. And they'll be with us. I have residents that have been there since I started.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Wow. Wow. It's funny you say that, because what I had told my parents, which was difficult for them to process, was you're aging.
Mm-hmm.
My father, I think, was 85 years old. My mother was probably, I never let's say my mother's age, even worse is fun. I said, go while you're clear-headed,
Mm-hmm.
go while you can enjoy the activities, go while you can make friends. Because if you go when you're old and senile, you're not going to make friends. Go make friends now, and if you start to fade, people will still be your friends as long as possible. But you can't go in that way because no one's going to become your friend. And it worked really well. And as my mother was declining, she kept friends until the point where she just, I got to tell you, even when she was incoherent, which she was for quite a while, she had no affect and everything else. This one gentleman would come regularly, bring her a rose, and give her a kiss on top of her head, and sit with her for a few minutes and then leave, because she loved my mother.
Yeah.
Because my parents were very lovable people.
Mm-hmm.
But she wasn't lovable any longer. She was just a shell of herself, incommunicative, but he knew her back when, which wasn't that long before, but when she was well. So my commercial for you, and quite frankly for any independent living, is don't wait till it's too late. Don't wait until you need care and you're going into assisted living or nursing home. If you can get to the independent living care side first,
Right.
it's a whole different quality of life. It's country club living in one building.
Mm-hmm.
You have outings. which they get to go on. A lot of times these people don't drive any longer or shouldn't be driving any longer.
Right, right.
So, and then you have all the activities. I think I don't know if I said my father's favorite was news and reviews because he loved voicing his newly found conservative ideology. He became a conservative in his 70s from being from a Democrat. And I remember there's one other gentleman who agreed with my father would never speak up because so many people there took the other position in this room of people. And sometimes you see my father in the hall say, Dave, great debate today. But he would never speak himself. I think he was afraid of I don't know. He was afraid of
he enjoyed being there and listening to it. Sure.
He did. Someone was voicing his opinion for him. But but my father loved a lively debate. And in spite of the fact that there was another person of equal strength on the other side, they see each other in the hall and they were friends. That they didn't agree at all on these matters didn't matter. They were still friends, cordial and friendly to each other, and shared meals occasionally and so on. So it was nice to be able to have brain-stimulating activities.
Exactly.
Physically tangible activities, exercise classes. My parents exercised before they came. Just a real quick funny story was they live in a split-level house. They would do exercise. They'd start in the kitchen, and my mother would go counterclockwise into the dining room, into the living room, up the stairs, into the 3 bedrooms, down the stairs. My father would go counterclockwise, go down to the stairs. They'd meet in the middle stairs, give each other a high five, which in the 65 years of marriage they never did except when they did this exercise, and they would do 3 laps around the house. That was their exercise.
Right.
So it's a very comical image in my head, being I know my folks, I know the house. But then they go to your place and they have all the exercise classes.
Right.
Much better exercise than their high five going up down the stair exercise.
They want to keep their mind and their body, healthy.
Yes.
Right. So, living at home, a lot of times you get isolated. I mean, let's say it's winter, it's snowy, it's icy, you're not getting out of the house. What conversations are you having? Who has time to be on the phone for that long, But also it's different when you're just having a conversation face to face with people, like you said, going to the exercise classes, learning new things. You need to stimulate your mind by learning new things.
Keeps your brain from
Exactly. So if you can come in earlier, then you can really benefit from all of the programming that we offer.
Absolutely. They could have been there a year sooner, and they would have. My father's only there a couple of years before he passed. My mother was 5 years. And I so badly wish he'd gone there a year early. Would have been good for his, as you said, his mental health. He was sharp as a tack till he passed, so that wasn't an issue. Again, he was a very, very bright man. But it was just good for them on a physical health, on a dietary level, on a social level. And they were depressed with their friends leaving and passing away. So making all these new friends, it was like instantly you have a whole social circle.
Absolutely.
At your doorstep. So I have a question. So I don't normally endorse, but I am endorsing Brandywine Huntington Terrace.
Thank you. You have the experience to do so.
I do. I don't normally have the experience of people I interview on the podcast. And it was just second to none. I can't imagine a better experience on every level, from food to facility to staff to location.
And always so happy to hear.
But that's absolutely. I was so sad I couldn't get my in-laws to go there, but I understood they wanted to be where their social circle was outside of that facility and where they knew. So, but putting that aside, so we've been speaking for about 45 minutes or so. If there's any one takeaway you'd like people to, if somebody tuned in right now, what would you like to say? What's the most important thing we discussed today about Brandywine Huntington Terrace?
I would say, honestly, whether you're deciding to move into independent living or you already need the supportive services of our assisted living or our memory care, you're going to come, you're going to make friends, you're going to have fun, and you're going to be cared for.
Beautifully said. I concur. Thank you for being here so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. If you've enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you are going through. So if you are considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out to see how we can help. When working with us, you can sell your home in its current condition. There is no need to remove unwanted items, and you control when the house is sold, along with so many other advantages. Visit leavethekey.com or call us at 631-388-7771 to learn more about our senior home buying process.